With the focus shifting on corruption cases against top leaders and their tug-of-war with the deep state, it's the key word that's gone way down in the discourse in Pakistan. Kashmir doesn't exactly find a mention, but it is not the centerpiece of manifestos released by the Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz, the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf or the Pakistan People's Party, the big three players when it comes to these elections. But is this what it seems? We tried to find out.
With less than 2 weeks to go for voting, Pakistan's election scene is a chaotic mix of campaigning, mudslinging, threats, and of course, extravagant promises. The pundits point to another element evident since 1997. That was when India apparently ceased to be an election issue. A look at the election manifestos of the three main political parties does reinforce that view. Tehreek-e-Insaf on India. Kashmir is number 4 in foreign policy priorities. Need for a blueprint for resolving the Kashmir dispute. A framework must be the UN resolutions. Pakistan's People Party on India highlights so-called human rights abuses in Kashmir. It calls for resolving Kashmir on the basis of UN resolutions, against giving India a permanent seat in the UN Security Council. Pakistan Muslim League M. Kashmir figures as a religious conflict. Kashmiris are described as oppressed people. Support for Kashmir on the basis of UN resolutions. Frankly, none of this is new, but it does suggest a consensus across political parties about India. The consensus is not about friendship with India. No party is going to seek votes on the platform of better relations with India. That could be the kiss of death electorally. The PPP heir apparent Bilawal Bhutto describes Nawaz Sharif as Modi ka yaar or Modi's friend. Imran Khan says Sharif is a security risk, presumably because of his rumored friendship with an Indian industrialist. Or it could be because he invited Modi to Lahore for a family wedding. He can be called a traitor for his negative references to the Mumbai attacks. The only party to make a perfunctory reference to uninterrupted dialogue with India is the PPP. But it is accompanied with the usual caveats about Kashmir. Every party there believes that Kashmir belongs to Pakistan. They demand resolution of Kashmir on the basis of UN resolutions, while ignoring the fact that those same resolutions demand that Pakistan withdraw its forces from occupied Kashmir. There may be no public India bashing in these elections, but there's no need. India has been internalized to a point where it is seen as public enemy number 1. Bureau Report, WION.
So while Kashmir and India figure lower in priority compared to, say, economic issues, it doesn't mean that Kashmir and India are not issues at all in these elections. It seems that there's sort of an unspoken consensus across Pakistan's political class about India, and let's just say it's largely negative. Joining me this evening from New Delhi is TCA Raghavan, India's former envoy to Pakistan. We're hoping also to be joined from Peshawar by Rustam Shah Mohammad. He's a former Pakistani diplomat in a bit. But before I get to that, let me just say good evening to Ambassador Raghavan first. Thank you, sir, for speaking with us here at WION. Does Kashmir not featuring prominently in the manifestos of at least these three main parties come as a surprise to you?
No, I'm not surprised. In recent history, especially in the last 20-25 years, in no election in Pakistan have India-related issues figured very largely. The elections have been fought, lost and won on primarily domestic issues, and India-related issues or Kashmir-related issues have not figured prominently.
But do you think that...
So I'm not surprised that this time too, there is no great...
Yes, sir, carry on.
So I'm not surprised that this time too, there is no great prominence to India or Kashmir in the election. This may well be for different reasons. The lack of prominence of Kashmir is not because people in Pakistan are not concerned about Kashmir, but because, as your report hinted, there is a widespread consensus that that as far as Kashmir is concerned, most people in Pakistan have one and only one view. On India, the reason why it doesn't figure prominently in the election, there are many factors. One, as I said, is that no political party, no major political party except the fringe elements really sees India as a major domestic political issue in Pakistan today.
All right, but does India, at least, when we're looking at non-election times, it does come up quite frequently. Is it really speaking something that's so internalized, the concept of India, the concept of Kashmir in the Pakistan consciousness, perhaps, that, these parties don't even find it necessary to bring it up unless, of course, they're doing mudslinging when it comes to one of their own colleagues or one of their competitors?
Well, after elections, when a particular party has formed the government, baiting it on India has been an effective tactical strategy. But the fact is that most parties in the fray today have been in the government at some point of time or the other, except perhaps for the... can you hear me?
Yes, I can, sir. Carry on.
The line is gone. Okay. So, except perhaps for the PTI. For the PTI, their principal issue, the principal platform on which they are fighting the election is governance and corruption. India doesn't figure very largely in their mindscape. So, for all these reasons, and this is part of a historical trend, as I said, election time in Pakistan is not one in which we see prominent India baiting.
Right. Stay with me, sir. I have a few questions for you about the next story or the next area of focus on our broadcast this evening. It is rather unbelievable. The next report refers to the global terrorist Hafiz Saeed's son, Talha Saeed. Now, there is an indication that he could be targeted by terrorists. The son of the Mumbai massacre mastermind is reportedly facing threats from terror organizations. That is what the National Counter-Terrorism Authority of Pakistan's director, Obaid Farooq, has told Pakistan's Senate Committee on Interior. Now, at the risk of sounding repetitive, just to reiterate here, Hafiz Saeed heads the Jamaat-ud-Dawa. This is the parent organization of the Lashkar-e-Toiba, the terror outfit behind the Mumbai attacks that killed 166 Indians and foreigners. So here's a man who controls one of the most dangerous terror outfits in the world. He has money, he has power, and he has the access to deadly weapons and the backing, of course, of Pakistan's powerful establishment and even the courts. And now he has political ambitions. He's fielded candidates across Pakistan for the upcoming general elections. Yet, Pakistan's National Counter-Terrorism Agency fears for the life of his son, who will now get enhanced security cover. Right, let me go back to Ambassador Raghavan, who's with us on the broadcast from New Delhi. Ambassador Raghavan, there's always been this question of the relationship between the Pakistan military and these terror outfits, people like Hafiz Saeed. Now we're hearing reports of how the National Counter-Terrorism Agency itself is saying that someone like Talha Saeed is facing a terror threat. Does this sort of, strike you as an interesting element to this election? Not only are there terrorists standing as candidates, or their parties at least, but also raising the bogey of some sort of terror threat to the son of a recognized terrorist.
Well, I do see it as an interesting development. One feature of this election certainly is the quote-unquote mainstreaming of major extremist and terrorist groups. While the process of mainstreaming is in itself not new in Pakistan, this time it is happening on a much bigger and wider scale, and this is evidenced by the number of candidates who, belonging to these different groups, are standing for elections. It is also a fact that the principal threat many of these extremists and terrorists face has been from other terrorists and extremists. So that there is a threat against one of them is not surprising. But I am somewhat skeptical about this report. I feel that this is an attempt to give this particular candidate a greater prominence, because news like this makes the headlines, and headlines in election time for any candidate is always useful. So I'm somewhat skeptical about this particular report. Hafiz Saeed, his son, many of his prominent party colleagues have been going up and down Pakistan for the last 3 or 4 years, and there's never been any mention of a terrorist threat. That they should come up just 2 weeks before the election is somewhat unusual, and therefore I'm skeptical about it.
Fair enough.
I feel that this is an effort by the establishment or by the intelligence agencies to give this particular candidate more prominence.
Okay, the timing indeed is interesting. Let me ask our other guest who's just joined us on the broadcast what he thinks of it. Rustam Shah, former Pakistani diplomat, is joining us from Peshawar. Rustam, thank you for speaking with us here on the broadcast. This report about Talha Saeed, the son of Hafiz Saeed, facing some sort of a terror threat, do you find the timing of it interesting, given that we've not heard of anything of the sort in the run-up to the elections, during the time that the MML was trying to be registered by the Election Commission as well, and now suddenly when we're less than just about 2 weeks away from the elections, we hear about this terror threat hanging over Talha Saeed?
But there are terror threats all over the country. We have had very turbulent times just a few years ago, and there are certain militant organizations within Pakistan who could attack and who could also be attacked. But having said that, I do not believe that Hafiz Saeed has any great relevance in the context of the coming elections in Pakistan. He may have some relevance in the context of Kashmir, or maybe to an extent Afghanistan, but within the country, I do not believe that he has any significant support or following within Pakistan. But terror threats, yes, I think that the threat is mounting. There are currently, I think, about 10 politicians who have been identified as facing terror threats. So far, luckily, no such incident has taken place, and lots of preparations have been made, a lot of investment has been made. The security forces, the police, other agencies are active. They've all been called out to perform the duties connected with the election. This is going to be a very high-profile election because before the election started, one party has been weakened, it has been pulverized to an extent that was unimaginable 5-6 months ago. So there is a widespread belief that there is no level playing field for all political parties, and that is not a good omen for the fair elections this month. So let's see.
Okay, I had another question for you, but since you brought up, one particular party being pulverized, and I suppose you're referring to the PMLN over there, just for our viewers' benefit, I want to point out that last month, the global anti-terror financing watchdog, the Financial Action Task Force, placed Pakistan on the grey list. The FATF called on the Pakistan government to squeeze the flow of funds to terror groups like ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Jamaat-ud-Dawa and its affiliates. The Lashkar-e-Toiba and Falah-e-Insaniyat, Jaish-e-Mohammed, the Haqqani network and the Taliban. But there's been little action ever since to suggest any sort of crackdown on the JUD and its affiliates. On the contrary, the Pakistan military is being seen promoting global terrorist Hafiz Saeed and other Islamists in these elections. But running parallel to all of this is a campaign to take on established political parties. The speed with which cases of corruption against leaders of these parties are being pursued is unprecedented. Within days of it being formed, the Federal Investigation Agency's Joint Investigation Team, or JIT, is reported to have unearthed unaccounted money to the tune of 70 billion Pakistani rupees. This is double the illegal money originally believed to be parked in various accounts. Reports say in all, 65 fake accounts of businessmen and leaders are under the scanner. Ambassador Raghavan, news of corrupt politicians being brought to book would come as, welcome news to anyone in any part of the world. But when there are organizations that have been sanctioned, that have been recognized as terror outfits, the fact that there's no crackdown on them and yet there are speedy investigations that are undertaken when it comes to more established names ahead of an election, that does seem to raise a few eyebrows about intent.
Well, it's very clear, as Mr. Rustam Shah Mohammed just said, that considerable effort has been made to erode the strength of one particular party, and that led by Mr. Nawaz Sharif. What we have seen being done against him and his party is quite unprecedented, and that it comes on an anti-corruption platform is not new and is not surprising, because this has been the effective tactical strategy which the Pakistan establishment has always used against politicians who they feel are getting too big for their boots. So we are seeing that particular process being applied with considerable vehemence and a certain amount of vendetta against Nawaz Sharif. The question is whether this will pay off, whether this strategy will work, or whether the electorate has already made up its mind on the basis of entirely different calculations. That we have to wait and see. But you're quite right that there is a certain lack of even-handedness when it comes to pursuing corruption cases against politicians in the form of a vendetta and the long rope which is given to extremist and terrorist groups. And this is precisely why there is so much impatience in the international community with Pakistan today.
Right. Mr. Mohammed, there's also been a demand from the international community that these elections be free and fair. We saw the Pakistani army, the DG ISPR today issuing a statement clarifying that the army is, not involved, that it's not a partisan figure in this particular election. The fact that it had to come out with a statement like that itself, though, does that raise questions on why, when nobody was really asking them to make a public statement, that they chose to do so?
Well, the fact is that Pakistan has always had more than one power center. Now there is this judicial activism also, which is being witnessed all over. I mean, there is this ingress of the judiciary into the political domain, and that is causing problems to some parties. It is surprising how so many cases are being opened up against the politicians on the eve of election. Well, if there were any cases, that those cases should have been investigated, tried, and decided 2, 3, 4 years ago. But it is very, very strange. It is very intriguing that all these cases are brought out now against politicians, People's Party, Pakistan Muslim League, NU, and other political parties, particularly against the PMLN, Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz group. And that, in the view of many, would show that the elections are being managed, are being engineered to obtain desired results. Whether those results would then be compatible with the vision of the powers that be, and whether that arrangement would last 2 years or 3 years or 4 years, and what would be the quality of the civilian leadership, and would they be in a position to formulate policies in the realm of internal security, defense, foreign policy, etc. That remains to be seen.
All right. All I can say is that it's turning out to be quite a compelling contest, and we're just 2 weeks away. A lot is happening every single day. We'll leave it at that for today, gentlemen. Ambassador Raghavan and Mr. Mohammed, thank you both for taking out the time this evening to speak with us.